resist it without either words or blows, or the limits of tyrants are prescribed by the endurance of those whom they oppress. Men may not get all they work for in this world, but they must certainly work for all they get. If we ever get free from the oppression and wrongs heaped upon us, we must pay for their removal. We must do this by labor, by suffering, by sacrifice, and if needs be, by our lives and the lives of others. Well, we have this morning Jackie Reilly and Carolyn.
Oh, lots of other others. There are others here too.
Oh, okay. Well,
yeah.
Jackie, I'll count on you to introduce them.
Okay.
Okay, but I'll introduce you as a 30-year member of UUFNN, a native Nevada, a graduate of UNR. She's worked for the Committee to Aid Abused Children, Children's Behavioral Services, Child and Family Research Center. She retired from UNR as associate professor and a youth development specialist. And he's also been professor emerita of
I am professor emerita, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. She has served in multiple committees, ministries, and the board of UUFNN. And in case you didn't know, that she's our president.
Yeah.
And when not preoccupied with such things, she enjoys kayaking, quilting, and traveling with her 3 children and husband of 46 years.
Yes. Wow.
Jackie Reilly.
It's good to be here this morning with everyone. There you go. So we did a service a while back for the ARC reflection group. So let me just start way back. This is the book that kind of started it. Does anybody remember when Tim Weiss came and spoke? We used some of the funds from Bobby Talso.
Show it to the camera because we can't see it. Nope, you're too high up. Go lower. There it is. Perfect.
Thank you, Emily. So we started reading, we read this book. I read this book with a number of other people from the fellowship and from the community. However many years ago that was. I tried to figure it out, but I don't remember. Maybe somebody else remembers when that was, what year that was. We read 3 books at that time over the course of, I think, 6 months. We met every 2 weeks. We had at least 2 people from the from our community that were not members of the fellowship that I remember. Were any of you in that group when we read these books? No? Okay. There was oh gosh, no, can't think of his name. Donald, head of the NAACP. Gallimore, thank you. Donald came every single time that we read, we talked about the different books that we were reading at the time. And he and then there was another older Black man from the Muslim community that came every time.
I remember his name, but yeah.
And I loved it because they were so honest and straightforward with us. They didn't treat us with kid gloves. You know, they questioned us and were very pointed in their questions and comments. And when we stopped doing it, they were like, why are you stopping? And frankly, we were exhausted.
Yeah.
After meeting every 2 weeks and going through and reading the 3 books that we read at that time. That was all pre-COVID. We met out in the gathering space. Great conversations and a start. And then during COVID, we started what at the time we called the Antiracist Culture Reflection Group. Do you get the ARC? Bending the Arc of Justice. So that was part of why we picked that name. But also because we wanted it to be a reflection of what we read and learn and we think about it, we reflect on it. But reflection group was a little hard to remember, so now we call it book club. And it's the ARC book club. And we've been reading books for about 3 years now. I brought many of the books that we've read. I also brought some books down from my home bookshelf that my oldest calls the Wall of Shame. Because of, yes, Patrick, because of the topic, it's our spare bedroom, and that's where he sleeps when he comes home at the weekend to do laundry. So he calls it that, and I don't think of it as that. I think of it personally just as an awareness. I think we read, and others in the group can share why they joined the group. The most recent book that we read is this one, Enrique's Journey. And this book was recommended to me by Karen, Reverend Karen, shortly after we got back from our trip to Tucson. She said, if you want to understand why children come to the US unaccompanied, read this book. And it's a very hard, none of the books that we've read have been easy, hard easy. Some of them are more difficult academically, some are less so. But this one will explain why children travel across on the top of trains, walk for days with no food, are raped, beaten, and so on before they get here. And the reason is to see their moms, because their moms have left them to come and get money for food, because they can't eat wherever they are. So that's that one. This one is one that I suggest you all read. That's how far through I am, even though we finished it in the book.
That is a common read.
It is a common read.
Yes.
It is a common read. Do you know what a common read is? Some do, some don't. UUA puts out a common read every year. There's one a year, and it's one that they suggest every UU around the country read. And they always put out a study guide to go with it. This one was written, and some of you may remember Nancy Palmer Jones. Do you remember when we were paired years ago with the San Jose congregation? And it was kind of like an up and coming congregation with a more established congregation. And the board.
Which one was which?
We were the up and coming. Although we never felt that. Nancy Palmer Jones is a minister. I'm not sure if I think she might be retired now. I'm not sure. I still see her at GA singing in the choir, whether you're there in person or virtually. Anyway, she is a minister, maybe retired, and Karen Lim is a member of a congregation in New England state somewhere. And so she's the lay leader, and the two of them went to 5 different UU congregations and learned what those congregations were doing to become more diverse. So that's what this book is about. Go ahead.
Most of these books, well, I don't know if I can say most, but several of them are in the collection, including that Mistakes and Miracles, and along with the study guide.
Great.
So,
Good to
yeah,
know.
all the common reads.
Okay, all the
Wait.
common reads,
Oh,
okay.
yeah.
Good to know.
So let's look $100 book.
There you go.
Just about.
There you go. So the next book we're gonna read is The Color of Law. That'll start on January 10th. We meet, let me go back, we meet every other week, typically. We take some breaks now and then. We meet every other week, Wednesday nights from 6:30 to 8 on Zoom. And that's partly because we have participants from California. And I don't know, do any of you remember Brianna?
I do,
Yeah, Brianna's husband is in the Coast Guard, so they move every 3 years. She's in our book club, and she's in, where is she? Michigan now. Yeah, she went from here to Rhode Island, I think, and now they're in Michigan. She's been participating with us as well. And we welcome anybody. You don't have to be a UU, you can come, whatever. So we have folks on, and we have about 15 people, participants that come almost every single week, every other week when we meet, every single time when we meet. So this is the one we're gonna read, I think, I'm not sure quite when, we're waiting for it to come out in paperback. It's the history of the KKK. Yeah, as I said, none of our books are easy reads for the heart. When are you gonna read that, Jeff? I'm not sure, probably after the color of law. You watch, we put it in the e-news, what we're reading and when the meetings are. The next one is the color of law, which is the history of how, in the US, how segregation became part of our legal system. Isn't that lovely? So, sorry, this is a bit rambling, but, what we wanted to do today, I wanted to just give you kind of a bird's eye view of what we've done, what we're doing, and then have a discussion, because this is an open forum, so to speak. An open forum to discuss what do we want to do what can we do to make the world better here in our community? Thanks, Marcy, for coming up and getting.
Thank you.
While we have 15-ish members, participants that come, there's over 200 people in this congregation. And every now and then I'll wonder why we don't have more people, but it's, it's so hard. It's really hard. One of the most recent books that I read, and it's not a part of the ARC book club, is this one here, White Women. Everything you already know about your own racism and how to do better. Yeah, just gives me goosebumps, right? This book was suggested to be by my friend Stephanie Rector, who's a woman of color. And I read it. I read the first half, and then I read, about the first 2/3, and then the last third, on my way home from Monterey a couple of weeks ago. And when I finished, I just put it down, and I couldn't even, I don't know, it kind of slaps you in the face because of how we treat each other. And how, I don't know if you remember when we talked at the fellowship, I talked about a caste system in the US. We certainly have a caste system in the US. There's hierarchies, white men at the top, women of color at the very, very bottom. And it goes just all the way down there, up and down, income, all the rest of that. Stephanie and I met on Monday, and Stephanie, I don't know, is Stephanie on Zoom? No, she was gonna try and join, I think 9 o'clock.
No, she's not.
Okay, thanks, Emily. We met and talked about it, and I'm gonna have to read this one at least once more, or maybe even more than that, because it talked about how we other women, and especially we as white women, other women of color. We think of ourselves as better, and we're not. And what the two women that wrote this book, Regina Jackson and Soraya Rao, and I'm not sure if I'm saying it correctly, they're both women of color. They do a thing called Race to Dinner. They go to people's homes and have dinner, they being two women of color, and 10 or so white women come to dinner, and they talk about race. They point out anytime that a racist microaggression comment, whatever might be made. They try and help the women recognize it. And when you recognize those things in yourself, it doesn't feel good, and it's hard. And you don't always admit it. People don't always admit it, and that's actually a big part of what they found. That they point out. This book's a little hard because they're angry. But of course they're angry. If you think about it. Bob?
Just hearing you reminds me of some history that I read during the time of suffragettes, when the women were working for the vote. And there was an active discussion about, well, should we include women of color in our group for the vote? And they decided not to. They said, no, we're going to do it for us. And that's all I remember. But that was a big decision.
And
They could have gone the other way.
unfortunately, we've done that. We continue to do that. No, let's get it passed for us first. And then we'll work, on them, for them or whatever. We've done that throughout history in the United States, which is really unfortunate.
Well, thinking it the other way, of course, that's what happened during abolition as well.
Say it again.
That's what happened during abolition as well. Let's take care of the slavery of men first,
Yeah.
worry about the women later. So it turned out to be much later. Yeah.
And let black men vote before black women,
Oh, yeah.
Or what?
or white men, yeah, yeah.
Well, for instance, women had the vote in Turkey before they had it in the United States.
Wow.
They had it in Australia before they had it in the United States. And, so, you know, not that much sooner, but still.
Right,
Yeah.
so, go ahead, Phil, go ahead.
Jackie, when you were describing the dinner that those women would have, it reminded me of when, I think, as part of action, maybe Neil instituted, or we did the discussion in the great room with Black members of the community, and those were so powerful, and again, like you say, it's different when we're talking about it amongst us white bubble, but when you have a person of color that can lend their perspective, and they told us, I remember, you're right, they did not go back, and we break up into little, and it was so powerful, and I just wonder, at some point, there's a way for us to do something like that again, you know, reach out and have that voice, because it just, you know, we're talking to each other, we're, you know, we're pretty much in alignment, we're, you know, and
Right.
when you hear personal experiences
Right.
and reflections of how we're doing today, that was really amazing. I learned so much.
Were they invited or
Yes.
did they just come?
We invited, it was an invitation, I don't know how it happened, I wasn't part of setting that up, but it was great. Was it part of action?
And I can tell you, once I get back to the library, what year, you know, you talked about those two fellows. It was the year that Just Mercy, the Brian Stevenson
Oh.
book, that was the common read. And so, I wanted to, I still want to get to the point where we have a thing over the common read every year, you know, have group study on it. Benny, so I was working, you know, with you and Kristen and so then you guys added 2 more books. Oh my gosh.
We
So-
did, so it was
so-
funny, that's actually
so-
on the handout,
Mhm.
that
Yeah,
comment are on the handout,
Mhm.
actually, so it was 2015, 2016.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I just wanted to share this in case you can't see the chat, that Penelope made a really good point. She said, is it fair to ask people of color to educate us, meaning white people?
What do
Exactly.
you think?
Well,
No.
I don't know that it's fair, but quite frankly, as people have been talking about, people of color tell us what we need to hear and what we're not, what we're most likely avoiding. I mean, I'm hoping most everybody has read White Fragility, which is incredibly important to
Yes.
read, because that's where you get, once again, the Karens of the world, you know, making something that should be about racism against a person of color, about the white person who feels so badly that they said that, or that they felt that, and making the whole situation about them. And I mean, to my mind, we did that here when we had our 3-week racism discussion on Zoom, maybe in 2020. You know, where it was all about, how do you feel now that this person has
It's like a
said
therapy
this?
group.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, please, you know, it's like, we need to be slapped in the face about many things that we've just acquiesced to over millennia at this point, but certainly through decades of our lifetime and of our culture. So, at any rate, I think that, I think these discussions are very worthwhile, and the way that we could encourage them, so we have, rather than sitting around as a group of white people talking about this, it's like, yeah, hear what other people are saying and take it, you know, because it's like, I don't know, it's I moved here from Southern California where I had always worked in an industry that had, you know, all sorts of different cultures and ages and genders and all that kind of stuff. Move here to Reno where it's like, where are my black friends on this stuff? You know, it's like, yeah, all of that.
Yeah, another
Okay.
person, there was another remark raised about evaluating how our congregation has done as far as our anti-racism work. But I think that we don't need the true evaluation is looking out at the congregation and seeing how diverse it is. I don't think we need to have a test. I think it's diversity in our congregation and in our congregation's friend circle too. That's a really, because you know, you go to church, you go to the fellowship, you love the fellowship, and you tell your friends about it, you bring your friends. But if you don't have a diverse friend, a group of friends, we're still bringing in just white people. So to me, doing an evaluation is just by looking out on us and saying, are we really diverse for Reno? So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Emily. I just a couple of things on what Carol said, and I used to think that we needed to diversify here at Fellowship. I don't worry so much about that anymore for a couple of reasons. One, there's not a huge population of people of color in Reno Sparks. The growing number of Latinas, yes, but the other is, if I was a Black person, I think, and I had to step out the door every day with my armor on, why would I come to a white, predominantly white congregation where I had to continue to do that? I think that I wouldn't do that. I would go to a Black congregation where I might be able to relax a little bit and not be wary. I don't know. I'm not a Black person, so I can't guess that.
I remember many years ago when Emily campaigned, she brought several Black women here to have services and particularly to talk about Kwanzaa. And I remember someone going up to one of the Black women and saying, "Oh, why don't you come to our church?" And her reaction was, what she said, and I remember, she said, "I have my own church to go to."
Right, right.
And I thought about that afterwards, and I certainly agree with you, Jackie,
Yeah.
because being even one person or even a small group of people coming is difficult.
Right.
And so I don't think should be our goal.
I
think-
agree,
yeah.
I agree. I think that our goal should be, how can we participate more fully in diverse groups in our community? You know, it's like the NAACP, there are several organizations locally that have more diverse, the Faith in Action. You know, it's, we just need to communicate better rather than think, oh, people of color should come to us.
Exactly, I agree.
It's kind of a white supremacy.
Absolutely. And also, we're the best. We are the leaders of the cause, and we're not.
Yeah,
We're not
right.
the leaders of the
Nowhere
cause.
about us without us is what is commonly said. Nowhere about us without us. Don't decide what's best for me. Ask me.
Yeah.
You know, that's where that's coming from. Deborah.
One of the books that I think you have in the file there that we read was, yes, you did, that it was the one about the different UU congregations around the
Right.
country and their efforts to try to incorporate people of color.
Right.
And how difficult it was. And rather than going through that basically crisis, it was a crisis for all 5
Right.
congregations. And rather than going through that, the UU that I attended, the last UU in New Jersey that I attended, had sort of a sister church that was an African-American Baptist church. And we arranged events together where, everybody from both congregations came and you became familiar with some of the people, you met them at these groups. That might be a way to, because I think we talked about it when we were reading that book, the idea of reaching out and saying, how can we help you? What can we do together to,
Right.
and that's sort of what you were saying about getting involved in community, community activities with other groups and finding out how we can participate with them rather than feeling like we have to create something completely different here.
Yeah, one of the stories in that was Tulsa. They actually, you've heard about the massacre in Tulsa, probably. So what the UU congregation did there, I think, was they sold or moved out of their old building and built a new church a block from or very close to the Tulsa area where that had happened, in a Black church there. And they just started sharing and learning from each other with that congregation. We did a little of that when Neil was here. I remember going to the service at the Muslim community there on Audi Boulevard. We did some of that. That was at that same time that we were doing in 2015 when we were doing the reading and stuff.
I don't know if you remember Reverend Webb and the Black church over by the fairgrounds. I forget the name of it.
Second Baptist.
Second Baptist Church. I used to go there from time to time, really for the music. And I always enjoyed it. And I have to say, I felt more welcome there than I did here in terms of people coming up and saying, Bob, so good to see you here, have a seat and whatnot. It was very different.
Yeah.
And pleasant.
Good.
And, yeah.
Good. So, I'll go back to, there's a couple of things that you wouldn't believe, our book list is like 9 pages long. I went through a possible books to read. There's no lack of books to read about this issue. And I listed the ones that I thought we had read, and that we're going to read, a couple of them. And then I put the UUA Common Reads there for you. And I also included, we learned about, I don't know, maybe you saw the paper a few years ago that Dr. Kenneth Jones and Dr. Tema Okun wrote called White Supremacy, Characteristics of White Supremacy Culture. And that's what this is here, is a little summary of that. And then, what did I put on the back here? I started the UUA in October this year, started offering anti-racism learning circles. And you can join from anywhere. There's people from all across the country in them. And there's the woman, and I'm Jody something, not remembering her last name right. Feldman, Jody Feldman. Incredible woman. She does like 4 Zooms a day. I know, every 2 weeks she leads them. And there are these anti-racism learning circles, and she sends out about 3 or 4 resources, podcasts, short videos, things for you to listen to, watch. And then the group comes together and they talk, and there's anywhere from 5 to 20 or 15 people on those, and they're from all over the country, and she'll ask questions. And it's very similar in some ways to our anti-racism, our book club, where you get, here's some stuff to look at. In the book club, we read a section of the book. In this, you listen to the podcast, watch the video, and then there's questions to consider. And you have a discussion with the other people there. And they're offering them again. And I sent the announcement to Carol, and we'll get it out in the e-news. And I've made it to 1 or 2 of them, and then my presidency responsibilities got in the way and I haven't been back, but I will be back to do them because they're very good. So I put a number of the resources of things that she sent out to us on the back of this, and I know you can't click on it and go there from this piece of paper, but I'm guessing you can look it up and figure out how to find it. Who else in the group here is a part of the, because I don't want to trust my memory, I don't want to leave anybody out. Who else has been participating in the discussions, the book club? Carol, Sylvia, I know Penny, whoops, gotta look this way. Penny lives up there, I saw.
Brianna, like you said.
Brianna. Anybody else on the Zoom that's on Zoom? There's Penny. Penny's been doing this with us from the very, very beginning.
Well, Lynn.
And Liv is doing it and has been doing it as well. Currently Lily and Mary are the moderators. Mary's the Zoom person for service, so she's not here, and Lily's in the choir, so she's not here. But we've had great participation for the last 3 years. So a couple things. One, it's easy for us as white people to go home and just be or to forget about issues of racism stuff. If you're a person of color, your color is your color and you can't take it off. You are there. I mean, that's kind of one of those things that's come to me now and then. It's nice for us because we can take a break now and then from the whole difficulty of the issues and all of that. People of color can't. The other is that we have to be careful about, I think, is not falling into the habit or thought that all Black people think alike. They don't. I'll
Well,
give you
pick
an,
on white people.
right? Although if they did, we'd like them to think like we do.
Go to that.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
They have a very
So-
boring world.
Yeah, so when David Gamble Jr.'s opinion piece came out about 3-4 years ago, I sent it, did you any attend that forum that he did or listen to him at the service? Yeah, I've known DJ, as I call him, since he was in elementary school. Because his younger brother and my oldest were good buds, and his brother was at our house and with us a lot. When DJ wrote that article, that opinion piece, I sent it to my brother and his family. My brother is a white person, his wife is a Black woman. She came to the marriage with a child already, my nephew Kevin. Some of you may have met Kevin because he's lived with me a couple of times over the years. He is 3/4 Black, 1/4 Cherokee. They have a birth son, and my brother adopted my nephew Kevin when he was about 8 or 10. Then they have a son that they're the birth parents to, Jason. So Kevin is very dark-skinned. And we found out when he was about 30 that he's bipolar. So just to add that to the, ouch. Jason, very fair-skinned. They're about 7-8 years apart. So I sent that letter about, do you encounter racism? What's it like being a person of color in Reno? To my brother and all of them, the 4 of them, as kind of an aha for me of what it must be like and microaggressions. My brother had no clue what I was talking about, didn't know what a microaggression was. Even though I know all his life he's experienced, all his adult life, he's experienced them. When he and Brenda were dating, people in the grocery store would smash their grocery carts into them. That was about 45 years ago. They lived in Virginia at the time. Yeah, right?
Yeah. that makes sense now.
They were still burning crosses on the lawns down there, but my brother doesn't know what a microaggression is. It's awareness, that's all it is. He probably, and he likes to look at things as a rosy, everything's just fine. My nephew Kevin, so first off, my nephew Jason sent me, my brother said, I don't know what that even means. I don't get this. The younger nephew, Jason, said he was furious. He said, and my brother and his son, the youngest, are Trump supporters. All Black people and all white people don't think alike. Jason said Trump's gonna do the most for Black people, any of the people out there. And this was what, 5-6 years ago or whatever, whenever that article came out. Probably when Trump was running the first time. And my nephew, Kevin, went ballistic. He wrote about an 8-sentence reply to everybody on the email about all the microaggressions, macroaggressions that he had experienced in his life. So part of what's going on there is just differences in people. The darker skinned nephew has had to deal with a lot more than the fair skinned nephew. Jason's skin color is almost the same as mine. Very fair skinned. Very different lives, the two of them. And completely different life experiences, as all of us have. I didn't respond. I didn't even know how to, and someday I'll be brave enough, but they live in Virginia still. It'd be different if we could talk face to face and stuff, but people don't think alike. It doesn't matter if you have the same color skin or not. So that was my aha from that. I wanted to share that, and I know I've shared that before with others. Some of the other books that we've read are over there. If you'd like to take one, let me know. I'll write my name in it. There's a couple that I hope to read in the future. When we started the book club, Kristen hoped that we would read this one. We do this till we free us. We haven't read it yet. If she was here, she might be pushing for us to do that. I haven't read it yet, but that's supposed to be a really good one. It's Abolitionist Organizing and Transforming Justice. I thought what we could do today, which we've already started doing, but is just talk about how can we in our community, what can we do here? We could do all this reading and learning and changing the way that we see things and under our understanding of things, but what can we do here in our community? I think, Carol, you had some ideas. I don't mean to put you on the spot. Maybe not.
Well, I feel like an idea that I bring up a lot, involves youth. There's a Muslim fellow, Ibn Patel, founded the Interfaith Youth Council out of Chicago and years ago, and his tactic, and it's similar to Faith in Action and whatever, is to said a common denominator in any religious group is usually a service component. And his thing was for youth groups and all of these different, entities, religious entities would get together, and he started doing this in Chicago, for a service project. That's what it was. It wasn't to, proselytize or anything. It was clean up a park or paint something or whatever. And with regularity, all of these youth groups from around the city would get together, and the kids grew to know one another. And so the idea is not that, well, I guess people could visit each other's places of worship, but the idea is 5 years in the future, maybe some kid is in a conversation and another kid is saying denigrating things about Muslims or about Jewish people or about whatever, and the kids suddenly, can speak up and say, wait a second, I have a lot of friends. These are fine, these are good people. They're, it's like you set up these meetings. So through the course of time and with regularity, people become friends, or at least they become acquaintances with one another. And, he specifically focused on youth, high schoolers, middle schoolers, high schoolers, which I think is clearly a doable thing here in Reno, but also for adults, for us, and I feel like that's where Faith in Action and its predecessor Action was pretty good about, I remember going to those big gatherings at the Little Flower Church or whatever it is, and the place was filled, and there were people from all sorts of places, and that is a great thing. But you need somebody who wants to be a representative to, okay, you take it on, and do it. But that's that was one of the main ideas. I have friends locally who, Black friends who said, you know, could we get together and talk about these things? Because it isn't that easy being a person of color in Reno. And one of my friends said, you know, she was the only Black person hired in this, you know, office. And a couple of weeks after she's hired, the bigger corporate entity wanted to have an anti-racism thing, and so they sent her. And she said, you know, so they could pat themselves on the back. We have a person, she can go. And she's like, I just joined this company. I can't speak for it. You know, it's, anyway. So
That happens all the
kind of
time. Had a colleague at UNR that the same thing.
stuff.
She was always on anything that had to do with race or diversity.
Mhm.
I always tapped her. Deborah and then Betty.
One of the things that I agree with you so very strongly is that by having these color groups, you're breaking down the feeling of otherness. And you know, unfortunately, we all grow up with, from our families, I know I certainly did, and so it's taken a long time to break down the prejudices that were just inherent in your family. And by finding opportunities for people to work together and get to know each other and come to an understanding, wow, these are wonderful people, you know, and have more of an understanding of what their culture is and where they come from. It just breaks down that feeling of otherness that unfortunately we all have a tendency. But, you know, I think maybe it's getting better. There are more interracial, you know, you know, when you read statistics, like, I don't know if they have a date yet, but they say eventually there will be no blue-eyed people. Because it's, you know, and which is sort of funny, but, there are more, I remember going to a photo exhibit of, they were mostly young people, and each of the photos in the statement next to them, they had their name and then all of the different races. And some were, you know, not only Black, but Indigenous and, Pacific Rim. And so you saw all of these different faces, and it was wonderful to see, you know, all the differences, and we need to find opportunities to integrate ourselves.
Interact, yeah. Betty.
Well, I know there is an NAACP here, and I know there was another group of Blacks that we had relationships with, and I can't remember the name right now. And, I think
Black Wall Street, was that
What?
it? The Black Wall Street group?
No, it was before that. It was, you know, 30, 40 years ago. But when we go to action meetings, or the action meetings I went to, and when we would go to some of the NAACP meetings as a group, we always sat together. And that's because we were comfortable. Yeah, and of course, but if we want to really learn, as you have indicated, Jackie, it's important that we take a step and get over being afraid and be a little reckless and go sit by somebody we don't know, it's not in our group. And I remember going to some of the luncheons or whatever, and there would always be a UU table.
Right.
So we didn't step out to sit with the people that we were there to support.
Right.
And so we didn't do our job, we failed. Yeah, I mean, I see it as a failure when, on our part, that we need to make that step, as Carol was talking about. And when we make it, then we see what that other person is involved in. And when that's talked about, legislative or in any other aspect, then we have some basis of speaking up and making our point, coaching.
Lou is attending the NAACP meetings, and I've attended them. They're very easy to join on Zoom.
Yeah.
They meet once a month. It's very easy to do. Go ahead, Carol.
Lily Egan and I went at Lily's invitation we participated in an interfaith potluck at, one of the Jewish synagogues, I think the last week in September. And one of the things that was said to us upon getting there was, you can sit at a table with the person you came with, but you both have to sit at tables with other people. And apparently this is something that the synagogue and some other churches have done periodically. And one of the women there asked, Lily, do you think your church would be interested in this? And I feel like that's a gimme, it's like they want to do it with them on a regular basis. And yeah, because there were all sorts of people there. From all sorts of churches of all denominations and everything, and I thought, yeah, this is easy. This is easy, get together and eat.
Right.
That's-
I don't know if it's the same group, the Interfaith Network, I think is the email that I get.
Yeah.
I've gone to, I heard, Rabbi Ben from Temple Sinai, which is the one up on Gulling
Yeah.
Road.
Yeah, that's where.
It's the more liberal of the
Yeah.
two. He spoke at, the library up on Robb a few months ago, just about what did he talk about? All the Jewish holidays throughout the year. And there were people from all different faiths there.
Mhm.
Yeah, that was good. And they do a number of different events, which are great to go to.
Yeah, I just thought.
So
yeah.
was Sinai putting that on, hosting that?
They were hosting it, but they were just hosting it for that
Ah.
time. It wasn't like their event. It was like, oh,
Right.
you can host it here next time or whatever.
That's great.
And
We'll maybe find out who that is.
yeah, that we can ask Lily again, who that was. But I mean, that's something right there. We meet people from other groups and, join them in different activities. So, yeah.
Bob, and then we'll ask Liv.
Every now and again, Garrison Keeler will talk about his childhood in Lake Wobegon. And one of the things he speaks of very fondly is school and the fact that kids from all social classes went to school together. The mayor's kids, the police chief's kids, the people unemployed's kids, they were all had a chance to get to know each other. And there's actually some research on that as far as integrating different kids, maybe disabled or developmentally disabled kids in regular classrooms. And they found that one of the best ways of doing that is not by talking to them about differences, but by working together and playing together and getting to know each other. And that's even a lesson for adults, not just talking, but games, playing. And that's one way. Another way to get to know somebody is to play cards with them or talk. I've learned how to play Uno recently, which is an old game. And what I've noticed about myself is when I start playing Uno, I start chatting. And in 5 minutes, I say, is it your turn or my turn? Because I get involved in conversation and getting to know the person I'm playing with. So there's room for casual fun.
All right, good. Thank you. Liv, did you want to say anything about NAACP or anything about the book club or anything? I don't know if you, oh, there we go.
No, well, I've been attending the NAACP meetings because I wanted to learn what perspective they have on what it's like living in Reno. And so I'm really doing listening at this point. I'm interested in some of their committees and, but they also are coming back from COVID.
Right.
So, and I think that's something we can all appreciate about what it's like to have sort of almost shut down for a while and to try to reinvigorate themselves. It's on,
on Zoom. Occasionally they have meetings where you can either come by Zoom or they don't really have a good place to have a face-to-face meeting. So it's easy to join in, and I joined NAACP, so I get a notice of the meetings. I could share those with anybody who's interested. I'd be happy to forward their notices. They're the second Thursday of the month from 7 to 8 p.m. And about the book club is first, I just really enjoyed hearing people talk today. I have gone through many phases of my attempt to be anti-racist, and I feel like I'm trying to get into a new phase now. But I like that some ideas are coming up about how we can be different in the community. And that's a way to be anti-racist, rather than just assuming that people will want to come to us and fit right into the way we've always done things. So it's really good to hear what people have to say today.
Thank you, Liv. Well, I think we're about out of time, which is amazing, but thank you. I don't know if there's any other questions or comments.
Well, I just think there's room for taking a more official step for us to affiliate with other groups, like NAACP is an obvious one, and let them know, we're doing this, and we would like to meet with you about this and whatnot, and do more things together, and perhaps not even meeting here, but meeting somewhere else. And so I think there's room for not waiting for that to happen, but to
Sure.
reach out
Sure.
and say, this is what we're doing, we'd like to do it with you.
One thing I know we can do with them is they do the annual on Martin Luther King
The dinner.
Jr. Well, there's the dinner, but the other thing that's even easier for you to do, doesn't cost you, well, it doesn't cost you much. They drive
Oh, that's right.
from a location, and at least one of the years it was from here. Does anybody know where MLK Junior Drive is in Reno? Or what is? The Martin Luther King Junior Drive, where is that? You know how many cities will have a street designated? Do you know where it is here? Marcy does.
It's on our freeway
And
here.
it's 395?
Yeah, it's 395. Well, we used to call it 395. I think it's 580, whatever it is.
It kind of splits.
Yeah. So what we've done is we've met at the Bethel AME on Rock Boulevard, or we've met here that morning, and usually you go in and have a cup of coffee or whatever, say hello, meet and greet, put signs in your car, say Martin Luther King or BLM or whatever you put in your signs in your car, and then we caravan out on the freeway out there, and then we say, see you next year. And you leave and whatever. That's a really easy thing to do that we can do to support. And I think it's great if more people come to that. And then the dinner, they have a Martin Luther King Jr. dinner probably at the Atlantis, huh? That's usually where most of those.
Hotel.
Yeah, wherever, you can watch for those will be announced, those are usually the tickets for that are, they don't cost just your gas money to.
That'll be coming up in a couple months.
Yeah, it would be.
Next month,
Yeah.
January.
And I just Google NAACP Reno.
Right.
You'll get to the.
Right. Please help yourself to take a look at the books over there. There's, let me know if you want to borrow one, that'd be fine. And these two.
This one's up for grabs, this is mine, but I'm willing to give it to anybody who wants to read it.
I'll give it back to you.
Oh, Marcy raised her hand too.
No, you're going, I'll give mine, sir. I'll get them.
You go first, because I have to get the stack. And I always have stacks.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
You want me to give it to?
Okay, I don't pass them.
Yeah.
All right.
I don't
pass
pass
it
it
out.
Just.
You pass it around then.
Yeah.
Thank you, Carol.
Well, Jackie, thank you very much
Yeah.
for this discussion and for your leadership. There is another Sunday forum coming up, and that's on January 21st on anti-Semitism. In fact, Bob gets the credit for bringing it to our attention and emphasizing its importance. And so we kind of reshuffled the schedule a little bit so that Elliot Mellon could speak to us about anti-Semitism. We have no idea what he's going to say, but
Local anti-Semitism.
yeah, exactly. And so I hope you'll all be there, and we'll see you there, but with coffee and donuts.
Thanks for inviting us.